Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Trollhunters Tales of Arcadia. Okay, so this episode, Hiss Hiss Bang Bang, is honestly the sense I could say that best describes what this episode is: Team Trollhunters dealing with the consequences of their actions. Because if you remember, they broke Jim out of, well, they just recently broke Jim out of his imprisonment within the Darklands, and that of course is manifested itself in some interesting ramifications. Obviously, we know Gunmar got out. They don't know Gunmar got out yet, but they do realize that something got out of the Darklands, and that's what the premise of the episode is. So the episode starts off with us following a cat, and that's essentially essentially how the opening sequence is framed. It follows a cat, doing cat things, slinking in between dumpsters and other things, going through, it's slinking in and out of alleyways. It also runs into oncoming traffic and just barely avoids getting hit. When it eventually arrives at the back of the cinema theater in Arcadia. I don't know the name of the theater. I don't remember the name of the theater. All I know is that it's a theater. But we see two teenagers walk out with remarking that the movie they just watched stunk, and that the director who made it was most likely going to have a very short career. But in any case, it continues to follow the cat until it reaches a dumpster. At which point, we suddenly hear goblin chittering coming from the dumpster, and the cat then proceeds to climb up to the dumpster because it hears a new noise. It wants to investigate what the noise is. At which point, it's attacked by a new variant of goblins that we've sort of seen, that we have previously seen before, but also I haven't really talked about. So the cat runs into this new breed of goblin called Blood Goblin, which is pure white with glowing red eyes, and they proceed to pull the cat into the dumpster and eat it. And at which point, that's how the opening episode is framed up. But opening of the episode is framed up. But in any case, meanwhile, we find out that Jim is still very much adjusting to life back in Arcadia, because it's his first full day back. And what we find out is that Jim he's essentially, because he's been in the Darklands for a while, he's very much excited about everything he had previously taken advantage of before. He's initially frustrated about his alarm going off to tell him that, hey, 6 a.m., get up, time for school, and then realizing, oh, my alarm, I used to have one of these, I'm happy that I have one of these. And that just winds up becoming a recurring thread throughout the start of the thing. He goes around about his morning routine, he goes take a shower, he is just appreciative of everything. And this, of course, culminates in him coming downstairs to discover that his mom is making breakfast. And we do discover that his mom, it's reestablished that his mom is not the best cook, because she's making breakfast, but she's convinced that she's put salt into her pancake recipe instead of sugar or whatever she's making. But and of course Jim hears this, and she points out that he should maybe skip the breakfast she made, at which point he pulls her into a hug, and he points out that he's just happy, and points out that he wouldn't change a thing. At which point he goes to take up his bagged lunch that he prepared previously, and proceeds to get ready to go to school. And of course Barbara does note that he's in a chipper mood, at which point he just claims that he's just happy to be back, with of course Barbara being very confused as to what he's talking about, but ultimately deciding it's not really worth looking into right now, because she's currently, trying to figure out what's wrong with her recipe. So, but in any case, it's at this point where Toby and Claire do in fact meets Jim outside of his house, and they proceed to go to school the way they always do. At which point Claire mentions why if Claire had asked Toby about what yet, and of course Toby points out that he doesn't think it's a good time, because he points out Jim has been, he just got out of the Darklands, he's still recovering and adjusting to life in Arcadia, so he admits that it's probably not a good time to do that. But of course Jim, we then find out that obviously Jim is very chipper and in a good mood because he gets to be in Arcadia again and he's happy. Of course, Claire points out that, yeah, it seems like Jim is really adjusting, but, of course, they'll point out that, they'll have to talk about it later when he's, they feel like he's into, that when he's, fully adjusted to school life, that it'll be fine. But, in case it is at this point where, Jim points out that it may be a good opportunity to use the shortcut, pointing out that he definitely wants to go through the canals and go faster and go a little bit faster that way. But of course Claire points out that actually in the time since she's developed a shortcut, and this of course causes Jim to wonder what exactly could be faster than the canals. At which point it's revealed that Claire has gotten really good with her shadow staff since Jim has been away. And for the time being, in the process, has to be able to get them to school within a matter of seconds. With of course Jim pointing out that yes, Claire was right, that was indeed faster. But of course he then proceeds to just start marveling at Arcadia High School, being very happy about the fact that he gets to go to school again, which of course then causes Toby to realize that maybe there is something wrong with Jim after all, pointing out that nobody looks forward to school. But in any case, it's at this point where Jim proceeds to walk onto the school campus and is a little bit floored because he suddenly has a massive round of applause. And is of course is at this point where Jim is very visibly confused as to what exactly happened. At which point Claire and Toby finally, come clean about what they did to cover for Jim. They then proceed to reveal that in the 2 weeks he's been gone, which was what we find out in this episode. We find out he's been gone roughly 2 weeks. And we find out that we find out that he's been gone roughly 2 weeks, and in that time, Claire and Toby have told everybody that Jim is suffering from a seemingly incurable disease. And of course they explain all this to Jim, even though this was already explained to Jim. This was already explained to everybody else, but since Jim has been gone, they do catch him up to speed, explaining that he's been gone. Supposedly was suffering from some incurable disease named after him that didn't actually exist, and so everybody thinks he's a walking medical mystery. Which of course, Jim is not entirely sure how that's supposed to work, but does admit that he's just happy that he's being welcomed back with a hero's welcome at school of all places. At which point, Eli walks up to Jim and pulls him into a big hug and is happy to see Jim again. Very happy that he's recovered, that he's fully recovered and is fine and all these other things. But Toby, of course, then has Eli break it up, pointing out that Jim might be quote unquote contagious, and he probably shouldn't hang around Jim too much. And of course, obviously Eli is happy to oblige, but also admits that he's very happy to have Jim back. At which point he runs off. At which point, it's at this point where Toby then proceeds to catch Jim up, pointing out that he's missed a lot of homework, which of course Jim starts filing through all of the books that he's gotten, and does remark that yes, he does in fact love homework, and is more than happy to catch up. And Steve, of course, overhears this and immediately comes up to Jim, trying to bully him, and admitting that he knows something weird is going on, but he's going to find out what's causing it, but is then completely thrown for a loop when Jim admits that he even missed Steve and proceeds to try and hug him. Which of course, Steve is very bewildered because he doesn't know why Jim would even remotely try to hug him, and is very visibly confused. But it is of course at this point where Toby then proceeds to see Darcy, and declaring he has unfinished business that he needs to go take care of. He proceeds to walk up to her with a big bouquet of flowers, and immediately what we find out is that. It's established that Toby doesn't know Darcy all that well, because immediately the first thing that happens is that he ultimately sneezes at the flowers he gives her, which implies that she's allergic. But Of course, Toby then points out that now that everything that a lot of things have cleared up in his life, and he is now no longer worried about the whole he's no longer worried about the whole gym thing. He doesn't say that, but he admits that that's what he's inferring to. But he says that a lot of things have cleared up in his life. So now Darcy has his undivided attention. But Darcy proceeds to tell him that, that of course she understands that Toby might have been busy, but she also admits that Toby said he loved her, and then he rarely saw her, and then she also admits that they don't know each other very well, and they do need to figure out if they're supposed to be together or not. Which, of course, case in point, pointing out that the first thing Toby does is give her flowers when she is allergic to flowers. And of course, then tells them that for the time being, until they have the opportunity to kind of get to know each other, that they should probably take it slow. And when Toby asks how slow, she responds glacial and leaves. Which of course, Toby is visibly heartbroken. But of course, this causes Jim to just remark that it seems like everything is back to the way it was, and is very happy about how everything has turned out. But of course, Toby is not very visibly happy. He admits that everybody got set back to square one, including him, and he's kind of mad. But in case after reuniting with everybody at the school, Jim is now very visibly happy about the fact that everything is seemingly the same. And it's at this point where after school they go to Troll Market, where he does remark that Troll Market is the same, but then also notes some Kubera are hanging around, which of course caused Jim to become a little visibly confused, because he has no idea why there's Kubera's just hanging around the Troll Market. But it's this point where they hear noise coming from Blinky's library, and immediately going to check on it, they discover that Blinky is burning all of Dictatius's old books, and there's a very good reason for that. Obviously Jim is surprised as to why Blinky is surprised, and a little bit shocked that Blinky would willingly throw away all the knowledge, but and also tries to put him out. But of course, Blinky remarks that he doesn't want anything to do with his brother anymore, for good reason. Obviously, his brother is a gum-gum. We now know this, but and of course he knows this, which is why he's burning all the books. He doesn't want anything bearing his brother's name in his library, so he is burning everything, even though Jim does explain to him that he is, very visibly, that he is very visibly, hates his brother. He just hates his brother now. Like, he's very visibly trying to move past his brother, and is trying to keep his library kind of clean of his gum ways of thinking. Even though the books have been helpful, like, that's established. The books have been helpful, and obviously Blinky is overreacting a bit. But of course, it's at this point where we also find out that ever since he came back to life, Arg has been sniffing things a lot. We find out that his sense of smell has been heightened. Case in point, he walks up to Toby, gets a good whiff of him, and then quickly discovers that he had spaghetti carbonara, which of course Toby does admit that he did. Like, we find out in this episode that he ate Jim's mother's carbonara in place of Jim, which of course because Toby had to cover for Jim in that time, and admits that was 3 days ago, and it's impressive that Arg was able to figure that out from his sense of smell alone. But in cases at this point where Jim, after somewhat successfully putting out all of Dictatius's books that Blinky has burned, does remark that now that even though that there's clearly something that they could do to take their mind off of everything, and does admit that since he's been been in the Darklands, obviously Trollhunter requests have had to have piled up. But Claire and Toby admit that they've been handling all of Jim's requests while he's been gone. They admit that he's pretty much caught up on all of his troll hunting work. So, which of course causes Jim to become a little bit crestfallen. But it's at this point where Arg then proceeds to get yet again another big whiff of something, and responds that it's Usurna that he smells. Case in point, Usurna, followed by Vendel, who is obviously using a makeshift staff that is a recurring joke, gets stuck on everything whenever Vendel walks through a door or under a light fixture or just about anything else, because he's not used to carrying this other staff. He usually wields his Hearthstone staff, but obviously, in order to bring Arg back, Blinky and the others gave that away. So, he doesn't have that one anymore. But, it of course gets to the point where, obviously, Jim, we're sort of obviously not happy to see Jim, because obviously, they sentenced Jim to death. They openly just destroyed the bridge with him in it, knowing full well that he would have that she should have died in the Darklands. But of course, Jim is very confused about all this, admitting that he also doesn't know why anything about what's going on, and also is confused about the Troll Tribunal and why they're there, because he never actually officially met the Troll Tribunal. The Tribunal just kind of showed up while he was in the Darklands, so he never met them. But of course, Jim is wondering what's going on, but Blinky just remarks that they missed a lot. But Vendel, on Jim's behalf, does admit that the Tribunal was lenient enough to drop all charges on the grounds that Jim cooperates and doesn't try anything, and his team doesn't try anything reckless again. And of course, they also admit that it could have caused disaster, pointing out that there's a very good possibility that Gunmar could have gotten out from the reckless actions. And ironically, that's what happened, but nobody else knows that yet. We'll get to that much later. But of course, Blinky does point out that it should be fine lying to them about the fact that Droll never left his post, and therefore everything should be fine and safe. And satisfied, Usurna leaves, while Vendel stays behind to chew out the rest of Team Trollhunter. And of course, he points out that he admits that while he's somewhat happy to have the Trollhunter back, he also admits that he's tired of having to stick his neck out for them, pointing out that he's sticking out so far that he's very liable to be his head chopped off. And of course, Jim just remarks that he's just happy to see Vendel again, which he does return the sentiment, but also admits that he is also hoping that they found some leads as to who stole his staff. And of course, Blinky, knowing fully well what happened, makes a big thing about how they don't know who did it, but they'll figure it out. And of course, this causes Vendel to be also somewhat satisfied, but admits that obviously, since Jim is just getting adjusted to his life in the Darklands, he admits that they could very well easily use their Trollhunter right now. Admitting that they've been having a goblin plot problem lately, and admits that Jim should probably go and deal with that. And this, of course, causes Jim to perk up, pointing out that it seems to be some good old-fashioned troll hunting mission, and Vendel just instructs them to leave, at which point they do. And of course, they proceed to go to where Vendel instructed them to go look behind the old movie theater in Arcadia. And of course, they start looking around and start with the dumpster, because they realize that if the goblins were hanging out anywhere, it would probably have been in the dumpster. So of course they start looking into it, and thanks to Arg's sense of smell, he's able to determine that yes, there is goblin feces in the dumpster, as well as a cat. Collar, what's left of the cat, and he does sniff it a little, and he does start sniffing it, after sniffing it a little bit, does confirm that it is in fact a blood goblin, which of course causes Toby to wonder what kind of color they're dealing with, pointing out the goblins come in all sorts of colors, and they could be blue, it could be red, it could be whatever color, green. But of course, we find out that Blinky explains that contrary to their name, blood goblins are blood white, are pure white, which of course with obviously red glowing eyes, as I explained. But and this, of course, causes Claire to realize that the most likely they came from the Darklands, explaining that that's the only way place where you're supposed to find them in. Sure enough, we've seen blood goblins a lot up until this point, but I haven't talked about them because they haven't been important to the story, to any sort of story episode yet. They've just been a variety of goblins that has just been hanging around. But of course, this causes Jim to realize that it's entirely his fault that the blood goblins have gotten out, pointing out that if he hadn't gotten stuck, they probably wouldn't have. But, and of course, he now realizes that the blood that we won't find, that they're not going to find the blood goblins easily, explaining that they're attracted to smell, and once they have their scent, there's no leaving them alone. But of course, they do point out that that Jim thinks that it is most likely going to be him and possibly Nomura who's in danger. But we find out that Nomura has since skipped town. She's not around. She's not around anymore. She's just kind of left the town for the time being, and isn't currently running her museum or anything else. She just left. So, and of course, Jim points out that he's also that even if Nomura is no longer around, he does feel like he's putting the rest of his friends in danger, pointing out that they'll most likely be sniffing out any sort of semblance of home, which includes him, since he was in the Darklands for an extended period of time. And but of course, we do find out that no, it's not just Jim. There is one other person who was in the Darklands that most likely would be in terrible danger. And Jim, immediately realizing who that is, they do immediately rush to Toby's house. And sure enough, we then cut to Noam Chomsky going on a quote-unquote romantic dinner with his quote-unquote girlfriend, and in his quote-unquote house. When suddenly he hears a note, and I should mention, Noam Chomsky is about to propose with an actual ring to his quote-unquote girlfriend. So, but it's just a Sally Go-Back doll. That's essentially what it is. But of course, Noam Chomsky hears the noise, immediately goes out to investigate, and not entirely sure what he's looking for. He eventually sees the blood goblins, who then proceed to try and attack him and chase him around Toby's room. And of course, Noam Chomsky is able to successfully give them the slip. They do rampage around the room for a bit, but they largely can't keep up because Noam Chomsky is just, he's a gnome. He's fast. They can't quite keep up with him. But eventually, he does give them the slip by using Toby's magic kit to make himself disappear. He disappears inside of Toby's, folding hat, and reappears as a figurine on a shelf, which they don't see him where he went. And eventually, he's able to get back to the house and hide. But but when he enters his dollhouse, he discovers that his quote-unquote girlfriend is gone. And eventually, he discovers that the goblins have in fact snatched up the doll and have now cornered him. At which point, Jim and the rest of the team Trollhunter arrive at Toby's house, and they immediately try to run upstairs and pass Toby's Nana. And Nancy wonders what they're doing, pointing out that she quote unquote heard them running around upstairs and thought they were playing. And of course, it is at this point where Toby, remarking that the goblins are here, remarks that it was just some music that he turned on and left on in his room. And Nancy admits that does kind of buy that excuse, but is also confused as to what kind of name the band Goblins Are Here is supposed to be, pointing out that she just does not understand what kids are into these days. And of course, they run upstairs to discover that Noam Chomsky is gone, minus his hat. And of course, now visibly upset about the fact that Noam Chomsky is gone, they point out that it's very tragic. With Toby pointing out that he survived the Darklands, and now he's been eaten by goblins, which of course is very tragic. And of course, this causes Jim to become upset, pointing out that it was supposed to be an easy mission. But of course, Claire points out that there's no easy missions, and of course, is this one where Toby points out that it's been very hard and awkward. That he admits that they've been trying to work as a team, but it's been very hard and very awkward ever since. And at which point he trails off, and Jim wonders what exactly it is he's talking about. At which point Toby finally confronts Jim about the fact that he went into the Darklands by himself when he wasn't supposed to do that. Essentially, he just lets him know that he was supposed to asks him why he went into the Darklands alone, pointing out that they found the amulet together, they were supposed to go in together, and then Claire proceeds to add on to that, pointing out that he agreed to go in and find her brother together, and which of course causes Jim to become, realizing now that his team is upset with him for what he did, he admits that there's a very good reason why he went into the Darklands alone. He saw Arg die and didn't want anything else to happen to any of his friends. So he admits that because of that, he's been trying to, just live life. He just kind of go into the Darklands alone so he didn't have to lose anybody else. And of course, admits that because of that, because of that, in classic Jim fashion, they had to come in and save him anyway. And of course, is very visibly annoyed that he had to rely on his team so much. But of course, they do admit that he's always said it's Team Trollhunters and not just Trollhunter. And they do admit, and of course, they do admit that even though they understand Jim's reasoning, and do point out that from now on they're going to continue to function as a team. They're not going to let Jim just go off on his own and do something dangerous again. They admit that they're going to stand by him no matter what, and of course with Jim satisfied does point out that he's sorry he worried all of them and made things strange with all of them, and admits he's not going to do that anymore. But at which point he goes on to proceed to try and give a eulogy for Noam Chomsky, waving his hat around, but Arg interrupts him, immediately starting to sniff the hat. And of course, Jim wonders why Arg's interrupting, pointing out that he's trying to give a eulogy for Noam Chomsky because they think he's dead. But then it's revealed to Arg that he's actually picked up their scent. And when they ask him to clarify, because he speaks it, Arg is monosyllabic. He doesn't usually use big words. He gets to this point where he proceeds to explain that no, he actually senses Noam Chomsky, which of course causes them to realize realizing that Noam Chomsky is alive, asked Arg to lead him to him, and of course he proceeds to lead them to, and what is revealed to be an old fireworks factory in the Arcadia's warehouse district, and they quickly realize that they need to figure out a way to get inside without alerting the goblins. So and of course, they quickly realize that they need to figure out a way in. So at which point, Claire offers, her quote unquote shortcut again. Which of course Jim remarks, let me guess, shortcut. So yeah, they use Claire's shadow stuff to get inside. And of course, Toby is very excited about the fact that that they're in a firework warehouse once he figures out that they're in a firework warehouse. But of course Jim tells him to put it down, pointing out that those are dangerous and that it's very likely that he should probably stay away from them. But it is of course at this point where they eventually do find Noam Chomsky. Tied to what is it? One of those rotisserie spigot things. While two of the goblins are currently rotating him and trying to cook him. While Noam Chomsky is, of course, trying not to. It's trying not to be cooked. And Jim, concluding that there's only two of them, does point out that it'll probably be fine because they still have the elements of surprise. But of course, Blinky points out that he seems off, pointing out that he could have sworn that there should have been three of them because they found three poops. And sure enough, they discovered that one of the goblins has in fact got the drop on them and proceeds to attack Blinky, which of course causes Blinky to start panicking as he tries to get the goblin off of his face. While Jim recites the incantation to summon his armor, but Toby has to correct him, pointing out that he starts reciting the wrong one. And Jim apologizes, pointing out that he's a little rusty because he's been in the Darklands. He's only used the Doom of Gunmar one, previously. Obviously, he's not keen on the whole Gloria Merlin one. He's been a little rusty with that one. But in any case, he does successfully summon his armor and starts fighting the goblins. And in the process, Noam Chomsky's skewer gets launched free from the fire in the process, and also they accidentally set the firework factory on fire. And of course, Toby immediately starts panicking / excitedly dancing because he admits that on the one hand he knows that they need to put it out. On the other hand, he thinks it's kind of cool and wonders to see what will happen. And he's panicking over what to do and wonders if they should put it out or see what happens. Put it out, see what happens. At which point, Arg tries to put it out, and realizing that he only made it worse, he then adds, see what happens. So at which point Claire tries to use a fire extinguisher to put it out, and that doesn't work. So unfortunately, And so unfortunately they realize that they're kind of screwed. They kind of have to just wait for the fireworks to blow up, and realizing now that the whole building is catching fire, they realize that they need to get Jim out of there. And meanwhile, Jim has successfully dealt with 2 of the 3 goblins, and with one of them of course dying on Toby, which Art just remarks is the circle of life. But in any case, it's at this point where Jim, after dealing with the last goblin while Claire frees Noam Chomsky, pointing out that he must have been terrified, Noam Chomsky then proceeds to run in, save the Sally Goldback doll that is his quote-unquote girlfriend, and run out heroically saving her, which of course everybody thinks is sweet. But in any case, it's at this point where Jim is currently fighting the last goblin and tells it to stay still, at which point, much to his surprise, it listens to him and starts sitting on a box. And now realizing that he and the goblin can sort of communicate, and realizing that the goblin can understand him, he then asks the blood goblin if anything else got out. And it's this point where the goblin does nod its head yes. And Jim asks if it was Gunmar, the goblin doesn't respond, instead merely jumping into the fire and killing itself, which of course causes Jim to become worried about the entire situation. But of course, they then proceed to run out of the fireworks now that Jim is satisfied about the fact that something else got out. And they do eventually successfully escape the fireworks using Claire's portal while they watch the fireworks blow up from a distance. And they do admit that it is far safer to watch this fireworks from a distance than it is up close. And Jim, of course, points out that he's now worried because of what the goblin told him, that something got out, and he's worried it might be Gunmar. But of course, we find out that according to Blinky, it should not be a problem because they would know if Gunmar got out. Because Gunmar, well, essentially how Blinky describes it is that Gunmar leaves just death and destruction in his wake, and if he did get out, they would know. They would very much know if he did. So they point out that for the time being, it's probably safe to assume he isn't out. So, and of course, causes Jim to feel a little bit better. But they do point out that from now on, he is going to try and take his team's, feelings into consideration. He admits that he's not going to go in half-cocked anymore and try and actually, work with his team to defeat threats like he used to. So, and of course, they do remark that they should probably get out of there. At which point, they ask Claire if they can use the shortcut again. And Claire, pointing out that she doesn't really feel like using their shadow staff and knowing that it's a beautiful night, does conclude that they should probably walk the rest of the way, and they decide to do that. Meanwhile, we find out that, contrary to what their belief, it is revealed that yes, Gunmar did in fact get out, alongside Dictatious and 2 of their soldiers. And Gunmar is leaning up against one of his soldiers because, very weak. He can't really move by himself without any real sustainment. Like, that was the entire point of his throne. He charges himself up to become more powerful, but obviously, without his throne, he's a lot weaker, and now he doesn't have a source of energy. Meanwhile, the other soldier is essentially Dictatious's walking stick. Like, that is essentially what their relationship is established to be. Dictatious, because Dictatious has, been blinded by his brother, he can no longer see, so he's blind. And so one of the Gum soldiers has to help him around. And of course it's this point where they see Dictatious more so hears the fireworks, but they do admit that they hear the sounds, and Dictatious wonders if it's some sort of sound of war. But Gunmar, who can actually see the fireworks, does point out that they're using the fireworks to light up the night sky. I mean, claiming that they fear him and fear the light that he's going to bring, the darkness that he's going to bring. So he admits that because of that, he's going to use his. He admits that once he brings about the eternal night, they will no longer be able to survive the darkness that he's currently, in, that they're currently trying to in, but also proceeds to remark that all the time in a Darkland, and he forgot that stars were a thing. So he's very happy to finally see stars again. But it's at this point where they arrive on a busy road, and it's at this point where a truck barrels down the street, and of course quickly telling them that they need to, quickly telling one of his soldiers to deal with it. One of the Gum soldiers does climb out in front of the vehicle and tries to slay it like a quote unquote monster. But all that really happens is he winds up getting run over and loses an arm. And this, of course, causes dictations to remark that it seems that whatever that beast was, they doesn't seem like the Gum soldier actually slayed it. And sure enough, the Gum soldier is badly injured, but also tries to serve his lord till the very end. And of course, Dictatious proceeds to remark that it seems that the creature that still thinks it can fight for him. And of course, Gunmar remarks that he has no need for weakness. At which point he kills the wounded soldier, telling it that this is how you properly slay something. At which point he now, unfortunately satisfied with the fact that he's eliminated weakness from his horde, he then discovers another car, and Gunmar prepares to slay it itself, only to discover that Otto is the one driving the car, and he gets out and greets Gunmar, telling them that they've been expecting him and that they're more than welcome to welcome their Dark Underlord, which of course they then remark that, and of course, realizing that he's with the Janus Order, they do proceed to go and meet with him. So, of course, that is how the episode ends. So, yeah, this episode establishes that Gunmar is going to be with the Janus Order for the foreseeable future, at least till the end of the season, because that's what happens. But, yeah, the Janus Order, but obviously this episode is very much about Jim dealing with the consequences of his actions. Obviously, he's now realizing that the blood goblins have gotten out because of him. He was in the Darklands. His friends had to do a very risky thing to get out, and obviously Droll left his post. So the blood goblins got out, and presumably, and since we know Gunmar got out, it's presumed that other things got out of the Darklands as well that we haven't seen yet. So I mean, we're probably not going to see much else come out of the Darklands other than Gunmar, because he's the main threat. But I wouldn't be surprised if off screen they start slaying a couple of other refugees from the Darklands. I would be very much not surprised if that happened. But in case, this is just what the episode is. It's Jim trying to go on an old-fashioned troll hunting mission, discovering that no, it is in fact him dealing with the consequences of him and his team dealing with the consequences of their own risky actions. So, overall, it's a fun episode. I do enjoy it, but that's what the premise is. But in any case, that's gonna do it for my review of Trollhunters. What you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well if you want to help support me. I would appreciate that. Go check out my Discord. Link is down on the description as per always. I try to do movie reviews like at the end of every month. I want to try and do a movie watch-along thing. So definitely go check those out. I would appreciate that. I would also go and check out my Twitch. We stream over here at both. Stream Saturdays and Sundays. Well, at least until Christmas, but we stream Saturdays and Sundays. And I would absolutely love it if you were to go check those out. Like, obviously you don't have to. We stream over here on YouTube as well, but depending on your preference, yeah, definitely go check either of those out. I would very much appreciate that if you did. And also, finally, if you guys want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video in after this video, whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. And so please be sure to go check both of those out. And I have no idea what it'll send you. Probably more Trollhunters. Being perfectly honest, probably gonna send you more Trollhunters. But in any case, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.